Okay, friends, welcome back to our online Bible study in Deuteronomy. Today we are looking at a warning that we have heard about before, that we will hear about again. It is God, through Moses, warning the people not to fall into the trap of worshiping idols, of worshiping anything other than the true God. This comes up a lot, and if it comes up a lot, then two things must be true. It must come up a lot because God knows this is really, really, really bad. It's not good. And it must come up a lot because he knows that it's really likely. I mean, think about the warnings that parents give to kids. You warn your kids not to cross the street without looking both ways for two reasons. One, because it would be really bad if they did that. But two, there are other things that would be just as equally as bad that parents will say to kids all the time. But you know that it's likely that your kids are going to do that if you're to park by a street or you're in your front yard. If God's bringing this up a lot, it must be that he knows, one, it's a really bad idea. Two, it's really likely that they're going to fall into this. So if you look at the first part here, the end of chapter 12, this is just Moses kind of addressing this in general. You can read it. I encourage you to read it slow. One of the things that we're reminded of is that the religions that the people in Canaan practiced were often violent. So you look at verse 31. They even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. This is likely an allusion to child sacrifice. So the religions that were practiced there before, it's not just that they're not true, but it's that they're often violent. Now we're going to get to some violence in just a minute that the Israelites practice also, but it's clear that God knows that it is bad for them to practice these religions. One, because they're not true, but also because they're doing things like this, and that's not God's heart. So it's bad for that reason, but it's also likely that they will. And of course, we know from reading the rest of the story of the Israelites that it does happen over and over again. One of the reasons that it's so likely is because oftentimes they fall into the trap of thinking, I can worship Yahweh and I can worship these other gods. I can hold those two things at the same time. But God stubbornly insists, no, you can't. It's either me or them. Right? There's no halfway here. And part of the reason they fall into it over and over again is that it's tempting to compromise and to believe I can worship Yahweh and these other gods. Are kind of hedge your bets. I'm gonna worship both. You know, all this may seem like it's just kind of arcane stories and what's this wisdom have to do with us today, but I think it has everything to do with us today. Tim Keller says that what an idol is a good thing that we make into an ultimate thing. It's a good thing like a relationship or like wealth or like material possessions. These are all good things. But to make that an ultimate thing in your life is where you get off track. It's like our prioritization is like a pyramid. Only one thing can be at the top. And the fallacy that we often believe is that you can put multiple things up there at the top. That's not the way that it works. The way of Jesus has God as the ultimate, through which all of our prioritization runs. And if you try to put anything up there with him, it just doesn't work. So then I have to ask myself, for me, I mean, with all the decisions that I'm making, the small ones and the big ones, is everything really truly going through the lens of my faith? Is that really truly the priority? After you get through the end of chapter 12 and you get into 13, you see just how seriously they take this. One, he says, look, even if people come and they do great signs and wonders, but they try to lead you towards another God, don't believe them. Even if it's somebody that's very, very close to you, this is that second paragraph, but they try to lead you towards another God, don't believe them. And there is even the commandment in here that those people who do lead the community towards worshiping other gods, that they should be killed. It's brutal. It's the kind of thing that we're embarrassed is in the Bible. But you got to understand, this is what was happening at the time. There's a recognition that if these people aren't killed, if they're not removed from the community, what they are doing will result in the death of the entire community. You can picture it like a cancer. It's like a cancer that has to be removed from the body, or else it will destroy the entire body. So that helps us to understand it just a little bit, but it's still harsh, and it still doesn't seem to congruent with the way of Jesus. And it doesn't seem to congruent with the way of Jesus because it doesn't. As I've said so many times in Deuteronomy so far, we have to read all of this through the lens of Jesus. Who is Jesus? But Jesus is the one human who comes and always gets that right. The Father is always at the top of the pyramid. There's no idol worship for him, either actual idols or the metaphorical ones like I was talking about a minute ago. His heart really, truly is with the Father. He really is pure. And rather than condemning other people to death who deserve death, he takes on the death himself. So on the heels of Jesus, we read this through that lens, and we see that those people who deserve to die through the law, they don't have to because he takes that death on himself. So on the other side, we are still firmly committed to worshiping the one true God who is revealed to us in Jesus. But rather than meeting those who don't do that with condemnation and with judgment, we meet them with love and we meet them with grace. You see how Jesus fulfills the law by taking on the death himself. And he changes the way in which we live into the teachings of the Torah. Because on the other side of Jesus, the death has been satisfied in Jesus. So we don't meet people with condemnation. We meet them with love and we meet them with grace, while also recognizing the warning is just as important for us as it was for them. It's not only a really bad idea to worship other gods, it's really likely to happen if we don't keep our eyes fixed on the one thing that should be at the top of our pyramid. And that is God the Father, who is revealed through Jesus and who we can know by the power of the Holy Spirit today. Keep with your reading, friends, and I'll see you next time.